Hi, everyone. Before you begin, before you continue through the session, take a couple of minutes to skim through competencies 5 and 6 for the science of teaching reading, and either competency 2 or competency 2 and 3, depending if you're EC through 6 or 4 through 8. So do that for a second to familiarize yourself with the content of today's session, and then move forward, please. So before we get started with our content for today, I just wanted to share, I have made this available on Canvas discussion board. I'm just wondering if some of you want to form a study group with others, you know, a group of where you guys get together and study on your own. And so if so, you know, go to Canvas, fill out the information here and post it on discussion board. And then you're able to match up with others that are available at the same times and want to study in the same ways that you do. So some of you might even choose to do that this morning during this recorded session. Maybe if anybody posts a discussion board as you were expecting to meet live, that you guys could still get together and form a group and view together and do the practice questions together. So if you're doing this at the time that we were scheduled to meet, you can go over there and see if you can get together with others. If not, then just do it for later and set in time and, you know, join up whenever you guys see that you have times available. Just an idea and another way to continue moving forward with your studying apart from the times that we have our sessions. So I'll go ahead and get started saying welcome, and we're here with our third test prep session. This is a recorded session only. Even though you were expecting a live session, we will go back to our live sessions next week and still make them a recorded option for those that want that and prefer that. But for those of you expecting to meet live, we will be back in our same place doing that next week. But for today, we're doing our third series recorded, and I hope you still find it helpful and useful and sharing this similar resources as before, as you'll see. So just encouraging you as always to keep on going. We're moving along swiftly through these competencies. I hope that you're finding the resources helpful and that you're starting to see how this all works together and aligns with things that you already know and across the exams, and that you're feeling more comfortable with what this is going to look like for you. So let's go ahead and jump in with our content for today. We're really focusing on this competency 5 and 6, doing an overview of both first. And I'll share with you resources that I put together for today, and then leave you on your own to do the practice test questions. Just like we've talked about over our last couple of sessions, I know what you guys are really wanting are these practice test questions. So this is really going to be more the format of our upcoming sessions of doing our overview of the competencies and looking at what's available to help you study, and then just giving you time to practice. So that will be starting today. So back to this chart we keep looking at to help us remember what this is going to look like for us. And we have worked through these first 4 competencies. Today we're looking at 5 and 6, the print concepts and alphabet knowledge, and phonics and other word identification skills. So really, if you're looking closely, you see how it's following a pattern of the way that what we're expected to know as teachers and the way that our students learn, from oral language from sounds to letters to working with words, all the way to fluency and down. And so it makes sense the way this is set up. So back to this visual, what we've talked about, we're working through our foundation. We've worked through talking about oral language, and now today's focus will be more on phonics because we did start with that last time. And then going into some aspects of word identification, which is that vocabulary piece. And then looking at spelling and its impact on how it is aligned with phonics and vocabulary and the way students learn the stages of spelling. So all of that is included in these competencies. So remember, this visual helps us to have a general picture of the areas of literacy development, but what we keep talking about is within each area, there are many different components and characteristics that we need to learn about, and that's the way the competencies are split up. So last time we covered our oral language and have this visual to help us think about that area and all the different pieces. And really, you know, it's not like this is all inclusive. It's, again, like I said, a cheat sheet to give you the ideas of the big concepts that you need to know. But of course, the idea would be to use this to then go in and study more about these areas so you fully understand how it all works together with oral language development. So let's look real quick first at the competencies for today, and we'll go back to the visual that's going to help us for today. Because like I said, we started out with the foundation, the oral language, working through phonological awareness, and now we're on the letter work and alphabet work and what that work looks like and what are the stages there and how that develops. So now we're moving on through our hot air balloon and through the different areas of literacy development. So for today, that's our focus: development of phonics, development of print concepts, how that works together with helping students with their reading and writing skills ultimately. So looking at 5 and 6 with science and teaching reading, they're related, you know, beginning with print concepts and going through what does that look like with phonics and word identification. There's some overlap there, word analysis and identification skills that you need to know for your EC through 6 exam. And in the 4 through 8 exam, where there's some overlap between that competency 2, just like there was last week, and also with competency 3. So some of the same expectations, just what does it look like at those upper levels for that exam? And so again, you're multitasking. All of these things are helping you across different exams. So that's why you see some of the same resources in the folders, and all of that is a tool for you to prepare for this portion of the exam. So now let's go back to this visual, because that's the one I want us to think about to get us going for today. Last week, we covered these top pieces. All of this top part of the hourglass visual is the phonological awareness, only done orally, only working with sound, beginning with what's easiest for students and getting a little more harder working with phonemes in different ways. And so these 2 stages are what we call phonemic awareness within the phonological awareness skills. And so just as a recap, you want to make sure, do you know what each of these are? What an example would look like if students were doing that, and you know, understanding what the activities look like when you're guiding students to do these things. And if you don't, then you're going back to last week's competency and looking through the resources there, including the assessment that very much works through these different levels. And that's a good resource. So now moving on, what we're looking at for today has to do with the phonics piece, and now the orthography piece. That means now we're working with words and written words. And so we've gone from doing the sounds, and now it's the student's job to connect what they know about sounds with the letters and the way that the words work. And so this is our focus for today. This bottom part of the hourglass encompasses phonics and the alphabetic principle. So as you're looking through these terms and understanding this is what we'll be asking our students to do, and seeing how they go from easier to harder, then again, do you know what these terms mean? Do you know what that looks like? Do you know examples of these things and activities? And if not, then this is what an area of study for you, because that will be what some of those questions look like. Just examples of students working through these levels and them asking you which is easier or harder, or if it's an example of one of these. So you want to be familiar with those. And these resources that I have for you today will help you. So now it's the alphabetic principle getting started. And just like last time, let me share a little video with you just to think about this area and connect it to what it looks like in the classroom. Okay, so again, using that to help us make connections to what we need to know about the alphabetic principle. You see an example there. These students are kindergartners, so you want to think about what's appropriate at that level for kindergarten. And they're manipulating the letters to make new words, manipulating them in different ways. Of course, they would not be doing that if they had not been successful with phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, working with just the sounds. So they have conquered that and moved on to the phonics and the alphabetic work. So that was examples of that in different ways that you can work with it to where you ultimately see how they're manipulating those phonemes and easily at the end there. So again, making connections and using videos to help, or your observations, if you're able to be in classrooms, what kind of connections can you see to the work that we're expecting our students to do? Okay, so just our definition of the alphabetic principle, connecting letters with their sounds to read and write. And that's the important thing. And you saw that in the video. They were working with letters, but also putting it back into a text with that big book and isolating words, because we always want them to understand that what we're doing with letters and sounds is helping them when it comes to reading and writing. So you have to connect it back to text. And so just like we just saw the example of the alphabetic principle, when they put down an A, they know what sound it makes, an M, they know that it makes the sound. And that's the principle that we're talking about. And just like I just said, in order for them to move forward with the alphabetic principle and phonics work, they have to have those phonological awareness skills done first. And that's what makes reading and writing easier, when all of those sounds and understanding of how those letters work together are recognized quickly and automatically. And that plays into fluency and comprehension. And we'll talk about that, but it all fits together. And these are the first steps to getting there. So really this alphabetic principle includes all these different skills that we need students to understand. And so you'll get examples of these, what that looks like, and be expected to be understand if you see some demonstrations of this in your exams, to be able to say, oh, they're working on the alphabetic principle when they're doing certain things. And this letter sound correspondence, that is the phonics piece that students have to be able to do to work with letters and words in different ways. And then it has to do with word identification skills. And so you see how they all build on one another for the alphabetic principle. So you might need to look at this a little more closely, but again, just a resource that shows the sequence of how you're teaching the alphabetic principle across the grade levels. And so this is a kindergarten example where at first they're identifying the letter matched to a sound, and then they're decoding, words and blending, sight word recognition. And this helps us to see how it gets progressively harder through the different grades and what you're expecting them to do across the grade levels when it comes to the alphabetic principle. So this is a good resource for looking at questions, and they say if the student is doing this, what grade level does it fall under? You can look back to this to help you with that. And so you see how it transitions from the alphabetic principle into your spelling and how they're expected to do what they understand with the word work and put it into spelling as they're writing. So a resource for you here, again, where you're looking at the sequence of instruction. And so that will help you to see the order that they go in and how you will work with the instruction of phonics. I think I showed you this briefly last week, the assessment that goes with phonics, and again, taking you through those different stages. A good resource to see what comes first and next, and what are the different stages and what you're expecting students to do, and how it gets progressively harder. So ultimately, you're expected to understand how students work through each of these areas and what are the stages. So all of these are good resources for you. And also a good glossary, really, because you're seeing what is the term and what do those look like. And these are examples of what the instruction or activities would look like in these different stages. And it's getting a little bit harder as you go along, as you progress through the grade levels. So lots of different ways of looking at it, but the idea is that you look at these visuals and you can say, okay, here's what I would be doing in each of these stages. Here's the activities. I better understand what CVC words are, blends and diagraphs, all these terms that you saw at the beginning, because that's what you're expected to be able to lead your students to do in the appropriate stages as they're ready. And so it might be that this requires more study for you to go through and understand exactly what are each of these and what do they look like in classroom instruction. And so this helps you, a cheat sheet, when I say what are diagraphs, what are diphthongs, and this is a good example of what those are. And if you don't know those and you know the terms for these, then it requires you to go a little deeper to study and practice with that. All of these things will be a helpful resource as you're looking through, the stages and what you expect students to be able to do. This is a nice visual also that does a nice alignment of the reading and writing stages along with the spelling stages and really show you how they work together from alphabet sound to get students to really have that connection with reading and writing. And so it's a little bit hard to see, but back in your resources folder, you'll find this visual along with a great article that goes with it to explain each of these stages. So this is just a good at a glance resource to see what the stages are and some examples of what they look like at each stage. And obviously getting more and more challenging as you continue along. Same thing here where you're seeing the stages and what the study looks like at those different stages. So look at each of those. You might print them and put them in your binders, or you might just, make a note in your binder of having these resources in our Canvas class. So before we wrap up, and oops, I didn't change that to 5 and 6, but I will. Remember, and wrap up before I get you over to your practice questions to work on. But I just want to remind you of your study resources. Just because I'm not having you do them when we're together, these are things that you're doing on your own to connect and help you to go a little deeper. Remember, you can look more closely at each of the statements and give yourself some way of pulling it apart and seeing where you are and what you know and what you need to know. I have the links up in the Google Drive, and you'll also see them in Canvas for today's work for this session, as well as the study resources that are posted there. And I like to include this each time, and I'll just keep adding to it just so all of the links are included in each PowerPoint, in each session that we have. So guys, before you go on to work on your practice questions, just a reminder, these things that you're needing to finish up, if you haven't yet, please do submit your practice test report. And some of you have on Canvas, but if you haven't yet, I just want to have those as a good starting point for each of us to look at where we began before we went through our session. So please do that if you haven't yet. As you finish this up, do go ahead and complete your attendance form, just like always, and submit that on Canvas or email it to me if you're working through the Google Drive. And then guys, here's where I want you to go through, and actually each of these links will take you to either a Kahoot or a Quizzes or a Quizlet quiz. And so it will, give you the answers as you work through them. These are all great resources. I think that it's a good, tool for you to see where you're getting confused or needing to study more. So just take time to work through each of these. And if you have questions you're not sure about, jot them down and feel free to send me a quick email just to clarify something or ask about it. And we will make sure and be together next week, and I'll have time to do a quick recap if you have anything you want to cover. But for right now, we're wrapping up, and I hope that you do take time to work on your own through these different quizzes and use those as a resource as you're moving forward, as well as look through our folder for today and see what other things I've provided for you, including other practice quizzes and shorter lessons around some of these areas to break it down some more. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And, again, you decide how much work you want to do to help you, and make sure and take that time to do it so that you can be as well prepared as you can be. So I'm wrapping up the session, and now you go ahead and take the rest of the time to work on your practice tests. So good luck, guys, and I will see you next week. Thank you for joining, and don't forget to do your attendance sheet. Bye-bye. Have a great rest of your week.